Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, welcome to special episode 267.5. That's how you know it's special, 0.5, of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com. All right, I'm your host, Anthony Renna. The show notes are located at ContinueFit.com. That's where I keep all my resources. It's also where you can check out about my new book, Be Like the Best. The book consists of 50 interviews with top fitness professionals, and after each interview, I have what I call a Be Like, which is just an action step or challenge that'll help you be like the best. You can check that out at ContinueFit.com or BeLikeTheBest.com. So for today's episode, I have on the first person in my book, in Be Like the Best, John Berardi. John's an entrepreneur best known as the co-founder of Precision Nutrition, the world's largest nutrition coaching, education, and software company. He's also the founder of Changemaker Academy, which is devoted to helping would-be change makers. That's you. If you're listening to this, you're a change maker. Turn your passion for health and fitness into a powerful purpose and wildly successful career. His book, Changemaker, comes out Tuesday, November 5th. Check it. You can check that out at changemakeracademy.com. We're going to have all the links to that in the show notes. John, thanks for doing this.
Oh, thank you, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for featuring me in your book. Also, I got a copy of it last week, I think, and had a lot of fun pouring through it, man. It's really cool to see all the diverse perspectives. Let's face it. A lot of the people in the book that are featured are sort of, exemplars or role models or heroes of mine coming up in the industry. And thankfully now they're my colleagues and peers. So it was really cool sort of, seeing my advice in context, like next to all of theirs, and seeing where, sometimes the opinions diverged and sometimes where the same thing came up over and over again. It was super cool, man. Congrats on getting it out.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's, we're going to talk about your book right now because there's a lot of things that you've seen over the years that are probably, like in the book where you see, ooh, yeah, success does leave clues, and they're saying it a little different, but it's pretty much the same type of thing, and I think it's a pretty cool perspective to get it, like you said, from all those people.
Yeah, that's my advice for everyone reading your book or reading any book for that matter. And it's one thing I teach in my book. I call it my squint the eyes strategy. And the idea is that if our eyes aren't squinted, if we're really trying to have 20/20 vision and see the details of life and really clearly, we sometimes get really bogged down by the particulars, like you said, how people phrase things or the context that they use it in. And what I think sort of becoming next level as a thinker is actually squinting your eyes, losing the details, looking for the principles, the commonalities, not what's different about things or the fine points on the edges, but where do they overlap? And that's what I really enjoy with a book like yours, because I use my squint the eye strategy and go, all right, cool. He said this, and yeah, but the principle behind it is this, and that's what 18 of the other people said. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the way. Most people know me from the nutrition world. It's the way to avoid all the controversy in nutrition that's happening nowadays, all the nonsense where people are just fighting with each other. They're putting on glasses. They want better than 20/20. They're trying to look at every detail of difference. And I'm like, no. The magic, the learning is when you look at where they overlap, where the similarities are. So anyway, that's my favorite thing to do. And that's what your book gave a chance to do, actually.
Yeah, very cool. And, it's funny because to that point with the Be Likes, I really wanted people to understand, and just for everybody that doesn't know, the Be Likes are just the challenges or action steps after each interview, like I took from a takeaway. And what I really wanted people to understand was, I'm not telling you that this is the only way to do it. That's why we have 50 people in the book. There's a lot of ways to do these things, and the Be Like is just a starter. That's it. It's just like or a suggestion. Like I don't care if you followed it to the letter, but I want you to fully commit to that be like. If you're going to pick that be like, fully commit to it, pick something and focus on it. I think because that's what we tend to do is we tend to kind of get a little bit like, well, I'm doing like 6 things from 10 different people, and it just gets crazy.
Yeah, and you end up doing none of them well.
Yeah, exactly. John, I want to start out with, because we never get to do this on a normal episode of the Strength Coach Podcast. This is obviously a special episode, it's just you, and we never really go into the stories, with people's background, etc. And I was listening to Michael Gervais' podcast with you, and I heard something that I'd never heard before. And I know you have the story in the book, but it's always better when you tell it. Just really the story about how, because I think people always look at like their heroes or their mentors or whatever, and they think that they were always like that. And they think, well, Berardi probably, he's pretty damn smart. He probably graduated, high school at 15 and went to Harvard and got a PhD by the time he was 18. And look at him now, and it's not like that. And I want you to tell your story because I want people to understand that, they're just like you.
Well, thanks for the chance. And I did almost end high school at 15, but it wasn't through graduation. Yeah, man. I grew up in an immigrant family, and my parents, taught me work ethic and a lot of amazing things. And and there's some other challenges with that as well. And they really manifested for me when I was in high school, when I just kind of fell in with whatever we call it, the wrong crowd or whatever the case is. But yeah, as a high school student, I was skipping school all the time, drunk and high most of the time, getting terrible grades. And it really was there was a turning point that happened shortly thereafter for me that sort of defines everything from before that and then everything after that. And for me, it was, one night we were out, drinking and driving. My buddy was driving his parents' car. Judge me, please. And it was not the right thing to be doing. But, we were out on these back roads heading towards town, which is, closer to where I lived. And, he was doing the goofy, swerve back and forth across the road to give everyone a thrill. And probably when you're drunk and high, shouldn't be doing that. Probably never should be doing that. But as we were getting closer to town, where the curbs start coming up and sidewalks and stuff, and he ended up sort of kind of hitting a sidewalk. And then, the car started spiraling across the road, 360s across the road. And I just, this moment is so vivid for me. It sounds almost like a movie scene when I tell it, but it was just so true and vivid. I just remember I was in the back of the car with 2 other guys. My best friend at the time, Chris, was sitting next to me. And I just remember, I knew this area really well. So as our car starts spiraling out of control, I'm thinking oh, we're definitely going to die tonight, because off to the other side where we were headed was an embankment and then just woods, so I'm like, this car is going to shoot off the embankment and just blast into one of these trees and we're done. And I remember I grabbed Chris, I pushed him down, and I kind of got kind of on top of him and just braced for the impact. And we were super lucky. We landed literally in between 2 trees. So just it was so close that the side view mirrors were both knocked off the car, but we didn't blast into the tree, And the reason this story is so important to me and it sort of defines the rest of my career is I just remember my entire life flashing before my eyes, as they say. I mean, I really did. I saw moments of my brother and I playing games when we were kids. And, this isn't a matter of seconds, but it slowed down. I saw all these scenes in my mind. And then the last scene that I saw was myself being lowered into the grave. And my parent, you're in the corner of the room watching, and my parents just grieving, but also ashamed, that feeling of just Jesus, this kid killed himself drinking and driving, how must that feel for a parent, not only the grief of losing their child, but also the embarrassment of how it happened. I wasn't doing much to make them proud at the time, but this would have been the ultimate climax of all my behaviors,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I remember we landed, we get out of the car, we dust ourselves off, and I look around and I'm just like, what am I doing here? You know? And the driver and the guy in the front seat were just like, oh man, we got to get this car back on the road. We're going to get in big time trouble. And he's like, my dad's going to kill me. And for me, it was totally different experience. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I got to get away from these people. I have to do something different with my life. And so I helped them like sort of push the car back onto the road. And I was like, all right, guys, man, I'm really shaken up. I'm just going to walk home from here. So I walk home that night. They end up driving. The car's like clearly something's happened. So they get pulled over by police and they all get arrested that night. And so for me, it was very like, it was a sign like, okay, I kind of made this choice and already it's working out. You know what I mean? These guys spent the night in jail and I avoided that fate. But that long walk home really had me brainstorming some different ways of being in the world. And that kicked off what is sort of this next phase of my life, which was, okay, cool. I need to figure out what to do. Now, it's really easy to be like, oh, and it's all up from there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, you know? Like my coping mechanisms for life were alcohol and drugs, you know? And so now I wasn't doing either. So not only didn't I have any of my friends, I didn't have my coping mechanisms. This was like a lonely year or so after that. And where I found my saving or my salvation or whatever was the gym. I started going to the gym because I had all this free time, you know, and I needed something as a coping mechanism for stress and for life. And so I just started going to the gym. And while I was there, this individual named Craig, who I write about in the book, he was the owner of the gym. He was everyone's hero. Like he owned a couple gyms in town. He was a bodybuilder. He was a really handsome dude. He drove a cool car. All the young girls loved him and swooned whenever he came in the room. So while, you know, I'm working out in this gym for a few weeks and he comes over and gives me some tips one day. And then I was doing leg presses and I was probably doing them very badly. So he comes over and gives me some suggestions. And then he was like, hey, you know, I see you coming in here regularly. It seems like you're trying pretty hard. Why don't you meet me tomorrow morning for a workout? I usually work out here with a couple of friends before the gym opens at 5:30 or whatever, 6 in the morning it was. He's like, so why don't you come do a leg workout with us tomorrow? And so I've since come to learn that was a test, right? I was like training legs that exact day, right? I was doing leg presses. And so he invited me for a 6 a.m. workout the next morning, which was his test for whether I was serious or not. And I showed up and he ended up becoming my training partner for the next several years and a big mentor. I mean, he gave me my first job at a gym. He, after workouts, which, I mean, these guys were strong and big and like 10, 11 years older than me. They were crushing it and they crushed me. You know, I'd go home and I'd just be unable to recover from these workouts, but I was growing and my body was changing and he just gives me books to read. He's like, hey, you're not going to be able to move much tonight. So why don't you read this book while you're later? And he really was my greatest mentor. This is exactly why I'm in the field today, because, you know, there was, you know, pre-JB and, you know, terrible student, drugs and alcohol, up to no good. I'd been arrested a few times up until that point in my life. And then there was post this experience, you know, where I found a mentor. He made me promise I would go to community college and get decent grades so that I could go to university and get an education. And that really launched everything. And so, you know, who knows why we end up with the people we decide to date or marry or the passions and hobbies that we end up with. You know, sometimes it's just twists of fate that lead us to those places. And for me, it was this is why I've spent, you know, the next 30 years of my career in this field and hope to spend the rest of my career in this field, in some ways paying back this one mentor, and paying the field back for all the great things that it's given me. There's a very different path I was on and could be on today if it wasn't for a couple of things. So that led me to where I am. And it's actually a sort of contributor to the book.
Yeah, I love that story too, because I think Alan Cosgrove used to tell a similar story about his first mentor who when he didn't have any money, instead of the guy saying, okay, why don't you go get a job and come back when you got some money, he said, no, you're still training. You'll be here tomorrow. You're going to sweep the floors. You're going to teach the other class, and we're going to keep going. And he chose that direction. Like Craig did the same thing, and he said he saw you probably not talking to anybody either. That was probably another thing. Like, oh, this guy's always alone, and he's doing shit wrong. And so, but it goes to show you, like, he gave you some real confidence. He also gave you some knowledge and gave you some accountability, and he gave you other people. Always important to surround yourself with better people. And he became a mentor. And it's kind of like we have to remember some of the things, the words we choose, or the way we act to other people. Instead of, Craig could have said, look at this little moron over there, this little skinny guy. Instead, he chose a different way to approach that. And this is why we're talking right now. It's amazing.
It is. And, for people listening, I've told this story a few times before in public, but not very often. And sometimes people are like, oh, man, you're so lucky you got a mentor. That's the hole in their life right now. And so that's what they gravitate towards. How do I get a mentor? And this is, I write about this in the book. This was seminal for me and for most people who tell you their story, especially if it isn't a linear, like, I started off as a genius and I'm still a genius here today. If it was a different kind of path, it usually involves people along the way, seeing the diamond in the rough. So the question is just how do you go out and seek mentors? And there's a whole section of that in the book where I talk about this idea. But the first thing I realized as I got older and got in a position to become a mentor myself was I had never understood what mentors got out of it. I think it's really important to understand what mentors get out of it so that if you want to go seek one, you can give them what they need out of it. You know what I mean? Like when you're young, you're a little bit needy. You're a little bit grabby. You're like, oh, what am I going to get out of this? Where's the mentor is going to take me the next level? It's like, all right, timeout, killer. That's another person. And they need something out of it too. And you need to know what that is. What I didn't appreciate was that when you get later in your career, there's stuff that there's stuff that you want to share. Now, you don't want to just share it with anyone. You want to share it with people who seem like good listeners, seem like hard workers, seem like they'll take that thing that you've learned through experience and hard work and trial and error and apply it in their life in a successful way, and then come back and tell you how they did. That's what mentors want out of it. And as I get older and more experienced, I realize I want that more and more. I want to find young people who have potential, no matter how rough they are right now. And I want to just tell them some stuff that I think I know. And I want them to grab it and go do something meaningful with it. And so, when you're so for folks out there who are looking for mentorship, you have to appreciate that mentors want mentees. But there's something that they want very specifically, and it's people who are serious, who are going to take it, who are going to run with it, who are going to report back and say, hey, that thing you suggested to me? Well, I actually did this here with it. Here's how it turned out. Got anything else for me? You know what I mean? That's like the greatest feeling when you're mentoring. Now, the approach to finding mentors is something that, I always do pretty organically. I'm an introverted person. So going out and networking and socializing and stuff like that is challenging for me. So for me, it's who do I look up to? Who's doing cool stuff? If there happens to be an opportunity to meet them or come across their contact information, I might, politely drop them a line or thank them for something that they've done and let it happen organically. But you and I both know Nate Green, who's an interesting guy, and I've worked together with Nate for many years. Nate in the book outlines a really, really detailed process for this. And so I love people to check that out. But he talks about like, here's how to construct the email. Here's how to do follow-ups. Here's what to do if they give you advice. Here's what to do if they say, no, thank you, I don't have any time for that right now. So you can be sort of respectful and awesome throughout the whole process. So, I love telling my story because I think there's a little bit of hope in it for people who are struggling right now. But there's the flip side too, which is, hey, mentorship's really valuable. Go get you some. But how do you do it? You can't just be sitting around waiting for mentors to come pluck you out. There's actually some ways to increase the probability that this happens.
Absolutely. Not that I want to correct you on that, but I do want to you did say you're looking, young people. I will say, for me, it's the opposite, not just the opposite. I want anyone that's hungry and willing, because even older, I'm 52, and I discovered Michael Hyatt a couple of years ago, and it was like the best thing for me. It was out of the fitness industry, right? And I would have never thought he was going to end up being a mentor to me. Now, do I talk to Michael? Yes, through that program that I did with him, and he did some really great stuff with me. So another point is, it doesn't have to be, and by the way, so many of the people I was not the oldest person in there. There was people that were extremely successful, so you don't have to be just some downhearted young person, newbie. It doesn't matter. There were older people who were more super successful that were going there looking for mentors as well. That's one thing. And then the other one was that person. I want people to know that a mentor doesn't always have to be somebody who like you had, like you're going to the gym and I'm just going to go to the gym and wait for somebody to pick me up. You can choose that person, and it doesn't have to be somebody who you maybe won't meet for a while.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you corrected or added to both, because I agree. I agree completely. And there's all kinds of ways to structure it. There could be paid mentorships. There could be just friendships. There, I talk about it in the book. There was a couple summers ago, we lived in a town called Grimsby in Ontario. And so there in Grimsby, they have this program where it's like a swimming intensive. So little kids go and they swim every single day. And it's in this public park. So it's kind of in a beautiful setting, and it's outdoors. And so our kids were doing it, right? And I think we had 3 at the time. So I would bring the kids there on our bike. We had a bike with one of those trailers that you could fit all the kids in. And I would bring them there on the bike, and I would sit on this park bench and just watch them swim for an hour and a half or whatever it is every night. And then I started this thing called the park bench sessions, where people who were contacting me for, hey, I'd love to meet, pick your brain on, do whatever. I would invite them out, and it didn't matter where they live. Sometimes people would drive 2 hours to come to this thing. And I was like, listen, I'm with my kids for this hour and a half every evening. I'm usually just sitting there watching them swim. If you want to meet me for an hour and a half, come, and we'll just talk about things. So we had the park bench sessions going for, so again, there's all kinds of interesting ways that this happens. And then after that happened, that's when I realized, like, oh, there's part of me that craves doing this. Obviously, too much of it I wouldn't like, because I also like to create and produce and do other things. But there's part of me that just wants to do, like, I could just sit here quietly and listen to music, but part of me wants to share what I've learned with people, regardless of the age, as you say. So it's interesting you brought up Michael Hyatt. I don't know if you ever got to meet Stu McLaren through that process. But Stu was kind of his communities and marketing guy. And so Stu was a big part of helping Michael grow his community and his platform. And Stu's like a neighbor of mine here. Our kids go to school together. So it's kind of a small world.
Yeah, I never met Stu, but obviously I know who, because he had left Michael but right before I started with the whole program. But obviously know how what an important part Stu was in that whole process and building his platform as well. So yeah, it's kind of wild.
Yeah, that's awesome.
John, I want to get into, you wrote this book, and you certainly could have done a bunch of other things instead. But we just talked about why you do these things that you do. You have this a need to kind of share and to educate. And I want to start out because I think, I've always said, like learning from my marketing background is that, don't develop a product unless you see that there's a need. Too many people develop a product and then they look for the need. No, look for the need first. Like, wow, this would be, you know what I really need is this. Well, then go out and do it. And what do you feel like is the pain in the fitness industry and that kind of made you want to, because I know right away in the book you started, here's the industry challenges. What are those that you feel like that really prompted you to be like, I need to address these?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the first point. I always tell people when they get bogged down with business and marketing, I'm like, it's all very, very simple. Business and marketing just come down to three things. The first is know what people want and are willing to spend their money on. And it's easier said than done.
Yep.
Your guesses would probably be wrong. So you need to do some research here. And again, we teach that in the book, like how there's a whole chapter on customer knowledge. The second is do something awesome to deliver that thing. So it's not enough to know what they want and build something. You have to do something remarkable that's worth talking about. Also, you're not going to figure that out on your own. There's processes for testing, for getting it in front of people, for figuring out whether they think it's awesome, for figuring out how to do things more awesome than you can do on your own. And then the last thing is tell everyone about it. And that's what people traditionally think of as marketing. But basically, one is marketing too, knowing what people want and are willing to buy. So that's what business is. Know what people are want and willing to buy. Easier said than done. Do something awesome to deliver it. Easier said than done. Yeah. Tell everyone about it. Easier said than done. But that's all it is. And so people have to figure out, like, whenever you're trying to prioritize your day or your activities, which part of that am I doing right now? Am I doing client knowledge? Am I doing building something awesome? Or am I telling everyone about it? And don't confuse them. Know what you're doing and make your priority. So to the point, this book stemmed from that process. In working at Precision Nutrition for all the years that I did, I realized that for most people, once they got their basic education pinned down, whether it's personal trainer certification or strength coach certification, or and then they added their movement certification and their nutrition certification, they were still standing there like, okay, what do I do though?
Yeah.
Like none of them teach you how to build a client base if you're going to be more entrepreneurial, build a business if you're going to be entrepreneurial, or even go out and get a job. I mean, so many people in our field underestimate all the opportunities that exist outside of coaching, but still inside of health and fitness. One story that I often tell is, one of the last hires I did at PN before I transitioned out of operational roles was hiring a product director. So someone who was responsible for our nutrition coaching software, developing it, making it better, moving into the future with it. And we ended up interviewing all these people who were like super passionate about health and fitness, just like every person listening to this, but also passionate about technology and didn't force themselves to choose. They did both. And now they're like product directors at big companies making $500,000 a year. So I'm like, you don't have to be a coach. Like you can bring all these interesting nooks and crannies and parts of yourself into this career. I mean, you do a host of things, but podcasting is one of them.
Sure.
Well, that is a different thing than coaching clients one-on-one or one-to-many. So there's all kinds of ways to make a career or a living in here that isn't just coaching or entrepreneurship. It's a little bit of a tangent, but it's part of the learnings that I got. As we started, looking at the folks who are doing certifications and doing education and standing in this health and fitness space and watching how, like, man, the turnover rates in our field are abysmal. There's people who are so passionate about this and want to work in this field who start today, and out of 10 of them, 4 or 5 won't be here next year. I mean,
it's crazy.
That's so terrible. I mean, there's people going into almost every other career right now that they're not even excited about and will be there a year from now. True.
Like,
they're going to hate their job. They're just going to be plugging along because it's a steady paycheck. not doing anything they're passionate about. So we're actually existing in this space where you have a chance for it to matter, for it to feel good, and you're gone. I hate that. So that's one of the big challenges. Most people who are starting out leave. And then the people who've been in the field for a while often feel kind of stuck, and they're like thrashing around. There doesn't feel like there's growth for them. They don't even know what they could do in a parallel move, not even an upward trajectory. So they're just kind of flailing around in the field, probably doing good work, probably changing lives, but probably not feeling very fulfilled. And so this describes such a huge chunk of our field. It makes me sad. And I realized, hey, I figured out a lot of these things through my experiences. But, I also, ran a company of 160 people that did coaching at scale, that did education at scale, that did software. So I'm like, I've seen a lot of sides of this industry and this field. I was a coach myself back in the day. I just felt like I wanted, the folks out there, so know what people want, need, and are willing to buy. I saw that all over, especially when we launched a software platform where it costs, X dollars a month to use the software, and people are churning out because they can't figure out how to get any clients or whether they should be coaching people at all. They're stuck in like an existential crisis. So I'm like, all right, I've interviewed enough people. I've seen the real challenges that they have. I know this is something that they want, need, and are willing to pay for. Now I need to do something awesome to deliver it and tell everyone about it. And incidentally, that's what we're doing today, telling everyone about it, right? Sure. So that's kind of, what is business? Then, hey, I ate my own dog food with this book. I followed that process. And then the last part is, cool, let me unpack it all for the rest of you, for everyone who ends up buying this, right? This is, it's me trying to practice what I preach as deeply as possible, right? Things I'm teaching in the book are the exact ways I went about deciding whether to write this book, creating it, and then letting people know about it.
Absolutely. Good stuff. John, you talked about people floundering around, and I really feel like that is a huge part of it. And it's why, for me in my book, we have a workbook coming out, like print on demand on Amazon. So it's like a compliment. It's just the be likes, and it's room for notes. And so people can actually write the things out. So, and I put things like Mark Fisher's, vision, this idea about your vision and your perfect life, and Krista Duran's idea about, finding your purpose, and Molly Galbraith's, figuring out what your values are. And then we get into people like you and Todd Durkin and the goal be likes, because those are some things. But you have to understand, I think too many people are drifting around and, like you said, floundering around as well. And there's so many of these good people, and that's the people that make me sad, is the people, so many of these people that are listening, strength coaches who are in a job and they're afraid to branch out. Like you said, they don't understand that there's these other ways to still be in this business, maybe as just a side hustle, like I did for so long. But do you feel like you've seen that a lot too? Like so many people just don't have that path. They don't have that purpose. They haven't been intentional about figuring it out.
I agree. And the last part's the most important, the intentionality of it, because if you're not, then the probability that you're going to go to a place that's a better fit isn't any higher. You know what I mean? You might as well stay where you're making some money and you're comfortable, at least, if not happy, than strike out randomly at something like a blind man walking around in a room they don't know. The point is, there's this process for being intentional about it. Chapter 2 of mine is about career, and the whole chapter is exercises to help you explicitly define your purpose, to come up with the unique abilities that will help serve that purpose, and then the values that serve as the guardrails for how you'll govern yourself in using those abilities towards those purposes. So let me get specific, because it can sound a little bit vague and conceptual, but the idea is many people's purpose is so vague in the field. I want to help people. Not good enough. I mean, it's noble, but you can go help people as a paramedic, You can help people as a barista serving coffee. There's a lot of ways you can help people. You need something better than that if you're going to call this thing your vocation or your calling. So, there's questions that we ask people, and it's not just you fill them out yourself. You have to ask the people around you, because sometimes we're blind to our unique abilities and the things that are so remarkable about us because we're so used to it ourselves. And so it's a process of answering questions yourself and then asking the people around you, and then you come up with a purpose statement. And mine always begin with, when I die or retire, ... So when I die or retire, I'd like to, or I'd like to know, or I'd like to have done. And so, I actually, for the folks who end up buying my book, when you take the dust jacket off, that little floppy paper cover that's on top, this is what it says on the inside. It's like a little secret printed right on the cover of the book. Usually it's plain, right? But I've got the book here right in front of me, and I'm folding it open, and it just says, ask yourself, when I die or retire, how will I know I followed my purpose? And that is just so important to me. And I think it's important if you're going to make a career change, or if you're going to go into a career, going through these exercises. So that's purpose, right? So you define this thing, right? And again, mine is, I want to know that when I die or retire, my work, and I don't need credit for it, will have helped the coaches and other people working in our industry see themselves differently, see their clients differently, and through that perception change, help the industry grow up. So that's my purpose. So I have it posted in my office. I read that. I didn't just recite it from memory, because I look at it every day, and it helps me make decisions. And then the next thing from that, okay, great. So but what do you do? So then comes your unique abilities. And that's the same thing. You have to send this out to the people close to you. You have to answer these questions, some other questions yourself. And your unique abilities are defined by three things. One is the thing that you are or have the ability to be best in the world at. Two, that you really enjoy doing, that you could do for the rest of your life and continue to want to get better at. And three, that makes a difference on whatever metrics you use. If financial is one of your important metrics, when I do this thing, it makes me more money. If reach is one of your metrics, when I do this thing, more people hear about me. If changing lives is one of your metrics, when I do this thing, more lives are changed. So that's unique abilities, right? And this is where we get to define the work, right? When you figure out what your unique abilities are, you can start saying like, oh, this is one of mine, right? These are the activities I should be doing to serve my purpose. And then your values are what I call your guardrails. Not only do they prevent you from doing things like unethical or immoral, they also prevent you from working too hard at the things you love, because you have to define, like, my values are my time with family, my self-care, and my work towards my purpose. Those are my three, and I look at those every day just like I look at my purpose. And so when we do these exercises with people, and again, you can do them in the book, the output is a higher probability chance of success. Instead of going, oh, what I'm doing isn't really fulfilling right now, maybe I should try X. Well, really all that is a copycat game. You see someone else doing X, and you're like, they seem to be happy. Oh my God, what a terrible way to go forward with life. You know what I mean? And how do you know they're happy? No idea. They look happy on social or whatever, So for me, these are just all low probability plays. The high probability play is to go through this process of purpose, unique abilities, values, nail that down. And now that helps make every decision about how you should spend your time, about what you should do next. Whether you should be a coach or a podcaster or a developer or an entrepreneur or a leader or whatever, change industries altogether.
I love it. And I'm excited I want people to understand this. I'm excited to really to dive into this and to do some more exercises. And I've done this a bunch of times. But I think it's an evolving process. And for me, I keep saying my mission is I want to help fitness professionals become successful and make an impact in the world. That's really not good enough. Like, after hearing yours, I want to go a little deeper, even more, even a little more detailed. And
Yeah, that's what I'd encourage you to do for sure. I mean, what yours is getting closer.
Yes.
It's getting closer to the ultimate, but you're like, okay, what do you mean by successful? Do you want them to make more money? Do you want them to change more lives? Do you want them to be fulfilled with their work? You could define that, and that would determine a whole suite of activities you would do and not do. And then, and so then you unpack the two phrases in yours and you get real specific. And then you go, and here's the most fun part is, okay, great. Lots of people will have the same mission. What makes Anthony special? And what can he bring to this thing that's different than everyone else? Because we don't need a bunch of copycats of what other people are doing. We need what's special about you serving this purpose. Because not everyone wants to serve this purpose. You do. So I tell the story of a woman that I met recently who really wanted to work at PN. And I met her at a lunch at a conference, at an event. And she was telling me this story. She used to be a special project manager for Bill Gates and is really good at her job. Ended up getting pregnant, having her son. And after the pregnancy was like, oh man, something's got to change. Like I can't have a family and work the way that I was. And my body, I haven't been taking care of my body. So she signed up for precision nutrition coaching and she had a really great outcome. And then she was like, this, right? So she's like, I think I want to join the health and fitness industry and become a coach. I'm a talented woman. I can do this. I've done bigger things than that. And so she went through all of our certifications and she mentored, and we have a whole process for people who want to do coaching with us. And part of the process is a screening process, right? To keep people out who shouldn't be coaches, not because they're not talented people, but because it's not their unique ability. And so she was telling me this story tearfully because she was like, I worked on this for like a couple of years and I never got hired. And you could tell she just felt like such a failure. Like, I was running Bill Gates' projects and I couldn't get a job at your stupid company, And after I empathized and we had a great chat, I was like, I have to tell you something now that, you're calm and it's good. I feel really proud that happened because our process is good. You would not make a great coach. Your unique abilities are so different. You should be using your unique abilities in the health and fitness field, kind of doing what you did for Bill, but with this value set over here. And that's what she ended up doing. She ended up being special project manager for a big company in our field, and doing work that she felt was meaningful, that was toward her purpose with her new value set, using her unique abilities. So that's it. Don't copy me. Don't copy Anthony. Don't copy your heroes. Go within. Who are you? And I'll give you another example of this that maybe will hit home for people. I do some informal coaching, like I said, whether it's my park bench sessions or other things. And one of my friends who I also help has a great business. And he was asking, like, how do I create a content machine like PN has? Precision Nutrition's known for content and long form articles and infographics and animated videos and, gets tons of traffic each month. And it's well respected for its content. And he was like, how do I create that machine? And my 1A and 1B was 1A, I could teach that to you. I mean, it's what I did for years. 1B is I don't see a single person on your team who's writing long form content, creating infographics right now, which means it's not your unique abilities. Like, people need to know. You remember Muscle Media 2000. Sure. It was the publication in the 90s. Yeah. And it was a print magazine. It's all you could get. There were no internet websites or anything like that you could go to for information on this. And so it was the big, like, kind of hardcore weightlifting, bodybuilding, sports supplement magazine. And I was like 19. Dude, I was writing articles for Muscle Media in like in the bedroom of my parents' house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would never get submitted or accepted. But this is what I was just doing when I wasn't getting paid. Like, I was writing long form content. Like, I was doing this in the dark, in the shadows, just because I couldn't help myself. use that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What are the things, people say ride the horses in the direction they're already going. So it's like, instead of doing that, I'm like, I see what the people in your company do. Y'all love to be on video. Y'all love to be on a microphone and talking. Figure out how to do that at the PN level instead of trying to be a content machine like PN with long form written content. That's the definition of using your unique abilities. You go get world class at the thing that you're special at, that you're doing when no one's looking. And so that for me is just really critical part of this whole career process.
Absolutely. I will say, even from my own perspective, that's what led me to the book, not because I felt like, oh, I'm a prolific writer, but what happened was when I launched my platform, I said the same thing. I said, well, I need a lead magnet. And for anybody that doesn't know, lead magnet is basically like, what am I going to give you in exchange for your email address? So what's my lead magnet going to be? And people are like, oh, you could do a PDF and you could do an ebook. And I said, no, I like to talk to people. I enjoy it. People know me for that as well. So I'm going to do interviews, 5 interviews on success, because going back to the mission statement and the purpose, it's so important to know, because like you said, it helps you make decisions. And I always say it answers a lot of questions. What should I talk about? I'm going to talk about success, because I want to help fitness professionals become more successful. So we'll give them some of the keys from these 5 people. So I chose something that was my unique ability to be able to get on the phone with these people and have a great conversation. And then that turned into, holy cow, this would be a good PDF. Wait a minute, this would be a good book. So I called 45 more people and said, hey, I got a book coming out. Even though I didn't, I lied. But I knew it would come out, and I did these interviews, and that's how I wrote the book. I didn't say, just interview you and take notes. I mean, I recorded and transcribed it. So I love that you talk about unique abilities, because too many people think you got to work always on your weaknesses. Okay, sometimes, but play to those strengths as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have a framework for this, which is it's not only work on your strengths and avoid your weaknesses. Yeah. It's not, do I build up my strengths or my weaknesses? It's, what context are you in? If you are going to be working as part of a team, then you should build out your strengths, focus on those exclusively, and hire out your weaknesses. Your team members should shore up your weaknesses. Don't spend a minute of time on the things that you're weak at. You hire people who are strong at those things, and they sit elbow to elbow with you and you work together as a team. If you're part of a team. If you're not part of a team, if you're a solopreneur, if you're just on your own, ignore your weaknesses at your peril. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stuff still has to get done. And if you're the only one in the organization, you're going to have to do that stuff, So that's really the framework here. It's too overly simplistic to say strengths or weaknesses. You have to say the context, right? So build up your strengths, make them world class. If you got people around you who can do the same for the things you hate doing, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have those people around you, then you got to balance your time on the different strengths versus weaknesses. You need to get better at your strengths. Someone out there is real hungry and getting real good at theirs, but you have to also figure out how to do the things you're weak at. So that's really my thinking around that. It becomes a rather silly debate.
Yeah. I love the way Michael Hyatt had us do in his Free to Focus work, and now it's a book, but he had this circle, and it was divided into 4 parts, and at the top of the circle was this pie, and it was the desire zone. And those were the things that you're good at and that you love doing. And then at the bottom pie was the dread zone. And those were things you are not good at and things that you hate doing. And then the other 2 were kind of in the middle, like, okay, you're good at them, but you hate doing them, or you hate you're great at them, but you're the opposite of that, right? So you love doing them, but you suck at them, right? So there's all these 4 pieces, and what he talked about was write everything down that you do in a day and start to put those in where they belong in that chart. Most of your time should be spent in that desire zone. For him, that's what his idea about productivity was, and there's a million ways to figure these things out, but I like that idea that you're talking about, though.
Yeah, I have essentially that same thing, a 4-quadrant system that people will fill out. And this is what we did with everyone at Precision Nutrition, with our team members, our new people coming onto the team and people who are working in the team. We're just like, record everything, put them in one of the 4 quadrants that they live in. And then what we want is an organization of people spending 80% of their time in that desire or unique ability zone. Like, imagine a company full of people who 8 out of 10 minutes that they spend at work are done doing what they are or could be world class at, love what they're doing, and has a chance of making a difference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that is awesome. And it's again, like many of the things we're saying, easier said than done, but it's the goal. It's the goal, right? And if you're not part of an organization, you have to do this on your own and figure out how to govern your own time accordingly. And if you're trying to build an organization, gosh, this is the organization you want to run.
Totally. Yeah. It's couldn't be said any better than that. So that's the organization that you want to run. John, I do want to repeat kind of, and you said it kind of a couple times, like this framework for, because the book, on the cover is, you're going to turn your passion for health and fitness into a powerful purpose and a wildly successful career. And in the intro, you do define success, because people have these different ideas, but you have a great framework for that. And I want you to just kind of go over that one more time before we get on to something else.
Yeah, I mean, for me, really what I think of success as, and the goal is turning something you're passionate about into work that you're proud of. That's where it has to begin. I really want to do this because health and fitness changed my life, or because it's been part of my life since I was little and it's a way of expressing my being. And then turn that into, your life's work, something that you're proud of. When someone says, hey, what do you do for a living? It's not, well, I'm a personal trainer, but it's, no, this is what I do. I'm a change maker. I help people X, Y, or Z to make enough money to do and have the things that you want. That's part of the equation. But then there's a caveat to learn whether the things you want and have are actually the right things for you. It becomes very easy to play this copycat game we talked about earlier. So-and-so, like, working in health and fitness means being a coach. So-and-so coaches like this. I guess I'll do it like that. Or Anthony just released a book, and he's promoting it through a podcast. That's what I should do. No. Who are you? Do you want the right things? Do you have the right things? Next is make your own schedule, work on valuable projects and make a difference. And then surround yourself with people who push you to be better and celebrate your success. To me, this is, at least in the professional context, a life well lived. There are metrics you could measure in your business. And one of them that we measured for years at PN was pride in work. So, we measured how much money we were making. We measured a whole host of other things, right? But one of the things we wanted our team to report out regularly was, are you proud of the things you've been working on? What are the things you've been working on? Rate your pride in each one. And that is part of the process. I mean, let's presume you get your education and you start working and you're 22 years old, and let's say you're going to live to 88. That's a lot of years of work, Yeah. It would be better if you were working on things that were meaningful to you and made you proud. You're going to spend a lot of hours on working. And so for me, the whole crux of a lot of the way I think about the world, a lot of the way I teach people to pursue their career, a lot of things I write about in Changemaker is this idea, and I felt it personally. I grew up in an immigrant family. Working hard is part of our DNA. It's all I saw growing up. I figured, man, if I'm going to work that hard anyway, I might as well get some rewards for it, because not everyone I grew up around got the rewards for it. That's why the ethic of like hustle and hard work lands always hollow for me. And people are always like, yeah, but you got to remember, you got to pay your dues, put in the grind, And it's like, yeah, but stop real quick. I grew up around people who worked way harder than most of the people I've ever met since. Immigrants came to America with nothing. they didn't get those rewards. They weren't crushing the entrepreneurial journey,
Yeah.
They were just barely making it, working that hard, which made me realize hard work is necessary. It sets the floor, but it's not sufficient for success. There needs to be strategy. And even more than that, though, the strategy can maybe set the upper limit for success. So the effort sets the floor, the strategy sets the upper limit. But when you're living in that space, you're living a human life. Wouldn't it be great to be proud of it too? So, this is a big ask for a lot of people in the world. A lot of people in the world aren't in a position where they can ask for this of life. But most of the people listening to this can.
Yeah.
They can ask for the ability to work hard, the ability to think clearly and be strategic about that work so that you end up, when you die or retire, you can ... And then also the ability to say, and do a thing that made me proud all along the way. Gosh, that's the holy grail here. And that's what we're talking about. And so I don't think it's too bold to dream about this and ask for this. And that was the point of writing Changemaker. I'm like, gosh, I'm so lucky. I got this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I met those criteria. And I come from a poor immigrant family, and this isn't a you can do it too story, because some people can't do it, okay? They're in circumstances that prevent that from happening, but it's few people, and it's generally not people who can have disposable time to listen to a podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So most people listening to this probably can do it. And so I'm like, great. Now let's stop the rah-rah motivation, and let's just give them the tools to do it.
Yeah. I love that you brought up proud. It's so weird because when I did wrote down my values years ago when I was going through the Cosgrove's coaching program, and read Tony Hsieh's Delivering Happiness, and really kind of was inspired to do that. And one of them was have pride in everything you do. And one of the things that made me want to do what I'm doing right now with selling my gym a couple years ago and really expand on this was how much pride I had in the Strength Coach podcast, in some of the things that I was doing. Like when people would say to me, hey, thank you so much for all you do, for providing these resources. And I didn't even think about that, like how important, and it's one of my values, but I like being proud of that is such an important piece. And it's funny because when I did my lecture at Perform Better, I did it on the 7 things that I learned from doing the book. And one of them, and I think this really goes to what you're talking about and to your title, it's why I said to everybody who's listening, you are a change maker, because I think the best of the best realize the impact that they're making. And I think it helps because you're going to be proud of what you're doing when you realize that impact that you're making. And I love that you called this change maker, because so many people for so long have been afraid, myself included, to say, I'm a personal trainer, right? Because there's so many other things that come along with that. But I love this idea of, you understand the impact you have, know that you're a change maker.
Yeah, and this is the thing. When you're proud of your work legitimately and personally, it doesn't matter what people say that you do. In my community here, people think I'm a personal trainer, and so I've had people come up and be like, oh yeah, hey, you're so-and-so's dad. I heard you're a personal trainer, or I heard you're a nutritionist or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, something like that. Because it's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's part of your brain that's like, well, that might be an oversimplification of what I do, but it's okay because I'm proud of my work. I'm proud of what I do. My ego doesn't need any other stroking, because it's my ego and myself is fueled by meaningful work that I'm paid well to do, that I'm extremely proud of having done. That right there is the formula for a wildly successful career.
So true. Well, John, I have taken enough of your time. I am really excited. At first, I was a little nervous. I'm like, I didn't get the book yet, and I was a little nervous. And I said, and by the way, that's a part of my strategy with interviews. I know it's going to sound funny and like I'm full of crap, but is to not go in knowing as much. Like, I don't want to write down questions.
Right.
Because I saw a thing today that said in a conversation, listening means like listening to understand, not listening to reply. And
Right.
so I have my notebook next to me when I'm listening to somebody, and I write down some notes to try to understand them and then try to ask questions based on what I don't understand so I can understand further. And I knew this would be relatively easy with the way you have an ability to make hard concepts really easy. So looking forward to this book, to getting it in my hands.
There any minute now, too. Everyone I sent to Anthony a copy, and much like you, things just take longer than you wanted them to. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So for us, getting everything into the warehouse and getting everything shipped, we've had this pre-order period has been full of blessings for us. We did a big initial print run of about 40,000 copies. All of them are already accounted for, so the warehouse is chucking copies as soon as they can be delivered from the print house. And then I wanted to write you a personal note as well. So that's what made it take a little longer. But I've been assured it's on the way. It'll probably be there today or Monday, right after this is over.
I'm sure I'll go right home and it's going to be there waiting for me. So, but John, thanks again for doing this. Thank you so much for all you do to help us in this industry and to help advance this industry and people in general. Really appreciate everything you do.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate what you're doing too, my friend. I literally on my desk right now have my book and your book right next to each other. I think they pair really, really well. And also just the opportunity to share this with everyone who listens regularly to your show. I mean, this is what I'm here for now. I wrote this stuff. I think it's thoughtful. I think it's meaningful. I think it's going to make a difference in the careers of a lot of people who read it. And I just want everyone to know about it. So you and the other folks who let me come on their podcast or let me talk about it on their websites, I appreciate you and them more than any of you all know. This is just it's my calling right now. I want to get this out.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 267.5 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Remember, you can try strengthcoach.com out for 3 days, just $1. You'll have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day. To access that offer, go to strengthcoach.com. Click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. Special thanks to Chris Parter and the folks over at Perform Better. Remember, right now they got free online shipping with no minimum order. You can go to performbetter.com to find out more about that. Thanks so much to John Berardi for coming on and talking about his new book, Changemaker. Remember, we'll have all the links to that at continuefit.com. My name's Anthony Renna. Don't forget, my book, Be Like the Best, is at belikethebest.com or continuefit.com. It's 50 interviews with top fitness professionals, including John Berardi. And after each interview is a Be Like, which is an action step or a challenge that'll help you be like the best. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.